जाके उसको रिमूव कर।
Okay. So let's begin what we already know and what is the current status of guidelines regarding the treatment of NASH. Something that has been updated now with the status of metformin, that it is currently no more recommended in treating of NASH in adults. It improves the liver enzymes and insulin resistance, no doubt about that. But it does not significantly improve the histology of the pathology of NASH. Regarding GLP-1 receptor antagonist, it is a premature to consider at this level to treat liver disease, as we do not have much of the evidence present in this area. Some other drugs that have been shown to have some activity against NASH and NAFLD, like pioglitazone, anti-diabetic drug. It has shown that in the biopsy-proven NASH, it improves liver histology in both the groups of diabetic and non-diabetic patients. For vitamin E, it can be used only in non-diabetic patients. In fact, in diabetic patients have not been. Now, these two drugs, pioglitazone and vitamin E, have some serious side effects for which the risk-benefit ratio has to be discussed and individualized for all patients. But whenever we are trying to prescribe these drugs, that will deal in detail next time. Now, what's the evidence? If we look at the evidence here, so histological features, ketosis, fibrosis, and all these markers and this assess the liver, fatty liver and NASH. And we see that both these drugs, in which this blue one is vitamin E and green one is pioglitazone, they show a good effect with significant p-values on histological improvement in ketosis. But in fibrosis, not so much of significant value, although there is some improvement, but not reaching to practical level. Globular inflammation is also one of our markers of ketosis, and we see there is a significant effect in which in here it is the pioglitazone having better effect. And then in hepatocellular ballooning, we have a better effect with vitamin E, and then a resolution of NASH. So only in fibrosis, there is a limited effect of these two drugs. Rest of the effects, they are having a good effect. And what about in diabetics? So in diabetics, vitamin E cannot be given, so only the results of NASH. And in a randomized controlled trial in a phase 4, it showed there is a more than 2-point reduction, equal to a more than 2-point reduction in NASH activity scores. And it shows that a significant effect has been achieved. In resolution of NASH, again, a very good effect. But in fibrosis, again, pioglitazone failed to have a significant improvement over the period of time. What about vitamin E? Vitamin E has shown a transplant-free survival improvement and improvement in the risk of hepatic decompensation. So these two effects have been shown in this study, which was conducted over a period of more than 5 years, and shown that a better response of vitamin E has been documented in transplant-free survival and hepatic decompensation, as shown by these two graphs. Now we come towards the safety and tolerability and recommendation therapies of these, and they are still off-label. Vitamin E given in 800 units per day in 2 divided doses. It has a possible all-cause reduction in mortality it has a significant increased risk of hemorrhagic stroke. Now, this is the problem with vitamin D. But it does show a small reduction in ischemic stroke presentation. It does have an increased risk of prostate carcinoma in these. So these two red flags with vitamin E are the deterrent for taking a decision while you want to treat them with non-diabetic patients of NASH with the vitamin E. Regarding 5-glutazone, there is a risk of weight gain of 2 to 3 kgs over 2 to 4 years. This again nullifies all the benefit we want to achieve by reduction of weight and by the overall prolongity and other cardiovascular risk factors reduction. These are hampered by giving 5-glutazone in long-term basis. There is a risk of osteoporosis, more in females, and definitely controversial risk, increased risk. Some studies say, some studies don't, a risk of bladder cancer in the future. So why we take a decision of taking these two drugs into our armamentarium and using them around patients, we have to individualize and see the risk-benefit ratio of these two drugs in management of NASH. So what would be the current available treatment options and the targets? Number one will be the control of obesity to reduce cardiovascular risk factors and target specific NASH therapy. Now, control obesity with lifestyle modifications, diet, exercise, which we tend to have very beautifully described by Gyas that we like to eat, everybody likes to eat, and with the change in the pattern of our dietary habits of our children, seeing more and more of obesity in childhood obesity, coming on, lead on to the adult obesity also. Some weight loss medication, bariatric surgery. Now, this is a very thing that has come on and has shown some promising results, which I'll be discussing later. Reduce cardiovascular risk by treating better managing type 2 diabetes with and their hyperglycemia, their hypertension, and their dyslipidemia. And with liver-directed treatment, and two of them we have discussed, rest I'll discuss now. Next slide. Now, what are the emerging new treatments? And these, when we see, this is how does the liver behave? Everybody knows that there's a fat infiltration of more than equal to 5% without ballooning or inflammation is non-alcoholic fatty liver. And when there is a ballooning or inflammation or Mallory-Weiss or megamegatractate, it becomes NASH. And then in the end, it becomes cirrhosis. And any cirrhosis can lead to, regardless of its cause of ignition, into hepatocellular carcinoma. So I'm repeating the slide used by Professor Gyas that what are the targets for our management for NASH? The NASH, there should be resolution of steatohepatitis overall, but there should be no worsening of fibrosis. So it should not be any drug that can improve one parameter and worsen another parameter. So we need an improvement in steatohepatitis without worsening of liver fibrosis, and on the other hand, improvement in fibrosis without worsening the steatohepatitis. So these two parameters should be fulfilled for any drug to be used for our NASH or NAFLD patients. So some experimental drugs which are still on, these are the drugs. This is cenicriviroc, and it is showing a primary, and study is showing a primary endpoint of more than or equal to more one-stage fibrosis improvement with no NASH worsening. Elafibranor, obeticholic acid, remistron, and amantadine. So let's talk one by one. This drug, which is a CCR2 and CCR5 inhibitor, as described in detail by Professor Shahid in his talk, that this drug blocks the combination of inflammatory markers, macrophage, with stellate cell. Now, stellate cell, as you all know, is the hallmark of inflammation and degeneration of fibrosis in liver. So its activation leads to fibrosis and inflammation and leads to cirrhosis. So this drug blocks at this point. So it probably, theoretically, limits its progression into the dangerous sites of the liver. And what are the results of its trial up to now? It has shown small improvement in the 2-point NASH activity score improvement and no fibrosis worsening. And it has shown some better effect, but still it has not reached to the statistically significant mark. And we look at the subsets of these patients in which we see that it is a maintained more than one stage fibrosis improvement from 1 year. So some effect has been documented by this drug, but has up till now, as the trial is in the phase 3, it will come into phase 4, we still have small improvements, not a major improvement in this trial. So it did have adverse effects moderate to moderate in this patient. Now, this elafibranor has the PPAR alpha and PPAR gamma inhibitors, and it reduces fatty acid oxidation, triglyceride lowering, HDL rising, and inflammation. And while the gamma one leads to lipoprotein metabolism, glucose hemostasis, and energy metabolism and inflammation. And the results of this drug of over a year trial with placebo control does show that in some of the that disappearance of ballooning, disappearance of mild resistance and lobular inflammation with the dose of 120 milligrams per day has shown a significant improvement in these drugs, while a lower dose of 80 milligrams did show some improvement, but not to a significant balance. A new fad has come up with obeticholic acid. People are very interested and has created a hype about this. This results in FXR, debilitating inflammation, and again preventing stellate cell activation. And this agonist, FXR agonist, acts as, and we see that in a randomized controlled, placebo-controlled trial, again, we see a very good improvement between a placebo and a 25 milligram dose of p-values of highly significant. And again, a 10 milligram dose also had a very significant improvement in the primary endpoint of fibrosis improvement by more than one stage, which was one of the criteria we discussed earlier by ASLD. Now, NASH resolution, again, it didn't have much of the benefit in this. Now, thyroid receptor beta agonist drug, remistron, is having a lot of action which are described by Dr. Shahid. I will not go into details, but I'll talk about its efficacy of 12 weeks treatment, and that shows that in remistron, there is a significant reduction and relative change from baseline from relative fat fraction assessed by MRI PVTI. So fat reduction, this has decreased in this chart. So now the link between non-invasive measures and liver histology, and we have to see that a 10-unit reduction of ALT is associated with histological improvement or resolution of NASH, and equal to a more than 17 units of ALT reduction predicts histological response. Now, this is very good, a marker, a non-invasive marker which we can set targets now that how the NASH and NAFLD is going to behave and what should we be aiming at in our treatment of these patients. And this investigation of MRI-PDFF is on that form. It's very expensive and not readily available even in Pakistan. So more than 5 or equal to 5% absolute reduction is associated with the improvement of steatosis, and equal to a more than 30% relative reduction is associated with improvement of NAFLD and activity score without fibrosis worsening. So now we have non-invasive markers on which to predict how our patient will be behaving and what we should be asking the patient to do. Now, from where we started with fibrosis improvement and NASH resolution. And as NASH progression to clinical outcome takes years and years, so trials of NASH treatment with Nevin surrogate markers have become important. So you cannot do these markers in our lifetime. So they need more than 3-4 lifetimes before we can become wise how they have behaved. So 2 or 3 generations are required for this treatment, but there are surrogate markers on which we'll be focusing now, as I told you one of them earlier also. And the evidence lies that the NAFLD and liver fibrosis is a risk factor for adverse death. As you see, there is a severe liver disease. You see more problems in F3 and F4, and liver disease mortality you see more in F3 and 4. And so the NAFLD is a reverse outcome of have a poor outcome as the disease progresses. So one evidence is there. And another evidence that regression of NASH cirrhosis is associated with improved clinical outcome, and this has been shown that improvement in NASH fibrosis was associated with lower risk for liver-related events. And there is, you see, there's this study had by Sanyal, presented in JASLD 2020, showed irrevocable evidence that if we do these, achieve these targets, there is a better outcome of the patient. Now, is NASH reversible? Again, the evidence comes from a single center study from bariatric surgery in severely obese patients with biopsy proven NASH. And it shows that a BMI loss of 5 lead to a resolution improvement of 5 to 10 points of BMI loss lead to 80%, and more than 10 BMI points loss lead to such a resolution. And after you see on the same time of evolution of fibrosis after bariatric surgery at 5 years, you see much of the improvement have come from this F0 has become this level of F0. So what we have evidence that NASH is reversible, and how it was done by a bariatric surgery at that time. So importance is that if you reduce weight, no matter how you reduce it, will have a beneficial effect on NASH. Does the reversal of NASH improve fibrosis score? And the evidence has come up from a study presented in JAMA, and the fibrosis state change with NASH activity scores has shown that as the stages on this in the first and the last biopsy and the 2 biopsies sequential on the same patient. So as the improvement of NASH has occurred, there has been improved in fibrosis score also. So 2 major points have shown that there is an improvement on these parameters if we acquire these. Or where we are heading now. Now, after reducing heparin, we need to have a weight loss, estrogenic lipid profile improvement, and glycemic control on these patients before we have a very good outcome on these patients. So let's see a patient, a hypothetical patient of Danish who had an F3 hepatic fibrosis, biopsy confirmed NASH, type 2 diabetic, obesity, and dyslipidemia. Now, what is current situation is? There is no approved treatment for him for NASH. He has hyperlipidemia, obesity, and his pain is going downhill. How we will treat will be based on data generated today and the agents currently being studied, which I discussed earlier. So Mr. Danish is at a high risk for liver outcome because of his F stage and liver disease mortality of 16.9% because of his fibrosis state. Now, what we can do is to reduce the prevent from fibrosis, reverse the NASH, and we can have a better metabolic profile if we go towards his obesity, type 2 diabetes, and dyslipidemia. Now, multiple agents are in development, and there are some oral and injectable, and these will affect on his control of better of dyslipidemias, diabetes, and will have a favorable outcome on his NASH. So, among them, we have FXR agonist, obeticholic acid, PPAR, in this pioglitazone we have discussed. We have Remestron, metabolic enzyme inhibitors, and on the other hand, injectables, we have GLP-1 receptors, and among them, semaglutide has shown a better response than on competitors in her class. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages using an injectable or oral therapies? We discuss now that in injectable potentially very potent on histopathology, unknown effect on GLP-1A receptor, and potential effect on metabolic profile. So practically, they have a faster action and a rapid action, but definitely cannot be continued on a very long time. They have a short-term induction therapy can be used as in F3 and F4, and used in F4 with rapid fibrosis progression or risk factors with significant metabolic comorbidities can be advocated. When we have oral approaches, they have a variable effect on histopathology as compared to the injectable ones, and variable effect on metabolic profile, but they have a favorable route of administration, may be well tolerated by the patient, then acceptability will be higher, possible uses of long-term treatment and maintenance, that is starting with the injectable and maintaining them on oral therapy, and on some multiple drug combinations can be given in this patient. So it's a busy slide which shows injectable therapies which are available, which are GLP-1. You see there's a better response with semaglutide as compared to the others. It also has shown impact of the NASH resolution with no fibrosis. Again, you have a semaglutide having better response, and there is no such difference. So different bars have shown, and we have a NASH resolution with no fibrosis worsening with semaglutide. The secondary endpoints, again, you see the different doses of semaglutide have shown that 0.4 milligram dose has shown a better response of improvement in NASH as compared to the lower dosage. Now, talking about hepatic outcomes of oral agents associated with various rates of patients with NASH resolution and associated with various rates of patients with fibrosis improvement. And these drugs, when compared with extrahepatic manifestation, we have to be very cautious because the patient is having other cardiovascular morbidities and problems that need to be addressed. So his obesity needs to improve, his type 2 diabetes and glycemic control has to improve, his dyslipidemia has to address all these factors for a better outcome on these patients. The extrahepatic outcomes of oral agents associated with various reduction in triglycerides and associated with various reduction in LDL as based to Remestron and Remestron. But one of the side effects of the obeticholic acid was that it, in some patients has shown that it increases the LDL value. Some also associated with reduction in HbA1c or body weight, and by contrast, the lanifibranor is associated with increased weight. So this group with pioglitazone have an increased weight, while the others may have a better response on this. Weight loss analysis has shown that weight loss has shown, as I talked earlier also, a better resolution of in NASH and fibrosis. Both of these graphs shows a very good improvement if these two targets are met in our patients. So In short, we can start with injectable and then come on towards oral therapy, which may be the future in our patients, and having targeted fibrosis improvement, NASH resolution, reduction in lipotoxic fat, weight loss, and this is the pyramid we are talking about in our patient in future. So summarizing my talk today, that the histological liver endpoints are currently accepted endpoints for NASH treatment. They're reversible on NASH or fibrosis without worsening of the other. Very important. And the extrahepatic endpoints may have a role, which is the better glycemic control, and the exogenic risk has to be addressed because these two may have a cardiovascular mortality may be very higher, even if we are trying to treat the NAFLD. So I thank you for your patient listening.